Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Tablas Creek Instagram live broadcast. I have a rock star guest today, Madeline Puckette, the founder of Wine Folly, author, innovator, kind of joiner of tech and wine in a super cool way. So I'm looking forward to inviting Madeline in just a couple minutes, but as I normally do, as we're getting ready for people to join, I want to share a few updates with what's going on here at the vineyard. So I'm going to share a couple pictures. The big news is that it's been hot for the last week, like really hot. We have had a string of days over 100 that is currently 8 days long. It has been up as hot as 109. And for all that, we have been spared the worst of it. There are our colleagues up in the North Coast in Napa and Sonoma that are dealing with temperatures in the over 110. The northern part of the Central Valley is up to the high 1 teens. So the main impact for us has just been that things have been getting ripe like you wouldn't believe. This is a picture of our crush pad this morning. We have grapes everywhere. It feels like we had to buy more bins because there are so many vineyards that are ready. It's crazy. We've basically done 3 weeks worth of ripening and 3 weeks worth of harvesting in the last week. A couple of the pictures to show you what we're doing. There is, again, fruit. This is Grenache that we're bringing in that goes directly into the press to become Catalan Rosé. Picture of that in the press. We've got grapes that are essentially ready, and we're just waiting for the chance to pick them. That includes things like Roussanne. We have Mourvèdre that is just about ready. Super early for us to have Mourvèdre ready. We have some things that aren't really quite ready yet. There's a picture of Counoise. You can see there's still some green berries here. So even with this accelerated ripening, it's still only the beginning of September. So you wouldn't expect everything to be ready, but at the same time, we've seen more ready than we ever have at this time of year. So in the cellar, we are pressing, again, dumping rosé to make direct press rosé. We are sorting and destemming reds to go into tanks. We're pressing both reds and whites. We're doing pump overs and punch downs on the red lots that are in the cellar right now. It's nuts. Full peak of harvest. The good thing is that we are kind of nearing the end of this particular heat wave. So it looks like it's going to ease on Friday and cool off by the weekend. We and the vines all need that little break. So we're all waiting anxiously for that. So far so good though. I'm cautiously optimistic. I feel like the main risk we were worried about is that big chunks of the vineyard would just get lost to raisoning because we wouldn't be able to keep up. And we have been able to keep up. It's one of the real benefits of having our own vineyard team, dedicated team that is here year round, is that we're not stuck competing with everybody else at the times when everybody is pushing. So that's the quick update from here. I will, if you're interested, we're going to be publishing a blog next week on kind of a harvest update, and we'll dive into really the full results when we have a chance to recuperate a little bit. Okay, so I am going to now invite Madeline to join. And I am hoping that we will see her momentarily. So there we go. I see. How are you, Madeline?
Hey.
I can hear you. I can hear you and see
Can
you.
you
It's
hear me?
perfect.
Okay,
All the bases covered.
perfect. You've had a crazy
We have
couple
had a
weeks.
crazy couple weeks. I think everybody in California wine country has had a crazy couple weeks. This heat wave is, it's not the highest temperatures we've ever seen, but it's the longest we've ever seen high temperatures like this at harvest time. So it's been like harvest is usually, it alternates between marathons and sprints where you go in and there'll be a couple of days where you're pushing as hard as you can, and then there'll be a little break, and this lasts for months. And instead we've been sprinting for like 9 days in a row, which feels like a lot, but the end's in sight.
I'm very surprised. I was speaking with a winemaker up in Napa Valley, and last week or the middle of last week, maybe the beginning of last week, and in the weekend, she's like, "It's coming in." She's like, even Cabernet. And I was thinking, oh, you mean the Sauvignon Blanc harvest has started? And because white grapes, right, they get picked first usually because we like that acidity. But she's like, no, I'm picking everything. It's all coming in. And she said her harvest is 3 weeks earlier than last year. And I'm just like, doesn't Cabernet usually get picked in October? Kind of a question. Like, I'm kind of blown away at how early this harvest is. And I got my fingers crossed for all of y'all right now. And I know everyone's working probably double time right now. So thanks for not canceling.
Ooh, this is a useful break, honestly. It encourages me to actually sit down for a few minutes. It's good. And it's
hello, everyone who's tuning in.
Seriously,
Mumbai,
we've got
India.
people signing in
That's
from all over the
cool.
United States. A couple international folks so far. Super fun. Excellent. So I gave a super quick intro as I was first starting, but I haven't really introduced you. So this is Madeline Puckette, joining me from the founder of Wine Folly, author, entrepreneur, generator of, I think, some of the coolest content in the world of wine. And I'm just excited to talk to you for a little bit. So the way I usually like to start is kind of ask people to talk about their path into wine. Was wine something that you knew you were interested in early on? Was it on your table growing up, or was it something that you came to later?
I definitely came to wine later. I have always been an artist and a musician, so I went to school for fine art and music technology composition. And so I was really interested in time-based media, sound design, art in general. And every art show we had, they served wine, and it was cheap, like $2 chuck. And so I knew I liked the white more than the red generally, and I would drink that. And I felt like wine was part of the experience of art. Like wherever there was art, wine was followed. It was at the table with the artistic people. You were sophisticated if you sipped wine versus guzzling, Malibu coconut rum. So that was how I was introduced into wine, is like, oh, if you want to be cool, you have to learn how to drink this bitter tart beverage because all the cool art people drink it too. Lo and behold, my dad, when I turned 21, gave me a wine subscription, and I got 2 bottles every month. And I was living in my studio at CalArts, and this is in Southern California. Great private school, awesome if you're into really conceptual art and that kind of a thing and want to be in the scene with its multiple métiers all sort of mashed together in one school. And it's a clothing optional school.
Okay.
Started in like the 60s and 70s, so it's like very progressive, but it's in the middle of suburbia in Valencia, like by Magic Mountain. So it's like a very weird like contrast between people who go to art school and then everybody else. And so that's where I was experiencing the wine, and my dad sent me this wine subscription. It was these 2 bottles were the finest things that I basically put into my body besides a bean burrito, while I was going to art school. And so I began to super appreciate them arriving, and with these 2 bottles of wine, and it didn't matter if they were white or red or red or red or all white or sparkling. I would suddenly pay attention to what I was drinking. And that was actually what got me my path into wine. Was I liked this bottle so much, I ordered more of it. Little did I know of this thing called vintage variation. And the vintage changed, and I was like, this is not the same thing. I swear it didn't taste like this the first time I tried it. And so in that moment, I discovered the trouble, the chasing the dragon, that is finding a wine that you like and then never having it again. So in that experience, I started to become passionate about how do I find more wine, and started reading books, started working part-time at a wine bar because I was interested in it and it was fun, and eventually became a sommelier, certified sommelier with Court of Masters, and started drawing visuals to help other people like me who don't like to read so much get into wine, because I'm a visual person. I'm a visual learner first.
Do you remember what that wine was, that first one that you ordered more of?
Actually, I do. and you're gonna love my answer. It was a 2005 Cotes du Rhone blend. I'm not gonna say the exact producer because I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but it was from France and it was a Cotes du Rhone. And if you remember 2005, that was a ball buster year. It was super warm, that vintage, and those wines were super fruity and lush and rich. And I smelled olives on the wine. It was the first time I smelled a savory flavor in wine other than fruit, you know? And I was like, actually it was my boyfriend at the time. He is now my husband. He smelled the olives first. So he has stayed with me. He has an excellent palate. And he smelled olives and he said, I smell olives. And that was the like, what? We were blown away by the savory wine and the savory flavors and being able to love savory flavors in wine. You know, the beer culture is very into savory things, but the wine culture, we're constantly searching for fruit. So that was my aha moment.
I think Rhones, in a lot of ways, they are great wines for people who are just starting to go from, oh yeah, I like a glass of wine, to, oh, I want to think about this wine a little bit, because they're generally blends of multiple things. They generally do have enough fruit to be like pleasurable and recognizable, but they're not all fruit. So there's these, you can get these savory elements. And I love that olive description. That's one of my favorite descriptors for Syrah. And it's one of the things I think that sometimes gets people over that first hump of like, this tastes good, but there's more to it than that it just tastes good.
Yeah, so that was my way into wine. Essentially, was art school.
Okay, great. So, at what point did you feel like, hey, I have a role to play here to help other people understand wine in a new way?
I have my husband partially to thank and to blame for helping me start Wine Folly, because I was going down the Court of Masters track, and I was actually very unhappy with it, and I was having a tough time because I knew I wanted to do. At this point, I had sold most of my music equipment, and I was committed to doing something with wine. And I have always been a very digital first person, technology oriented, loved the internet, had a website back with like GeoCities way back in the day, like started my own like music company called Mad World Records when I was 16, and I was recording 8 tracks, and like I had drum sets and we'd set up all this stuff. So it was very digital focused, technology focused individual. And I love wine, which is the antithesis.
Wine is famously old-fashioned in the way that it often presents itself. So hey, we'll get there, but yeah, keep going.
Right. It's so funny though, because I love the merging of the two. And I started a blog that was just a fun blog, and I would make beautiful art for it. And if you look in the Wayback Machine, you can see some of this stuff that I put out. And it's not really for anyone. It's more for me than it was for anyone else. I was making fun wine that smells like dog poop, you know, and I draw a picture of a dog coming out of, like, it was just outlandish stuff. It was pretty cool. In my world, it was very cool. And my husband was like, dude, you need to start thinking about your audience and what they want to learn about. Start paying attention to the posts that you put out that are actually useful to them, and do more of those. And so he started making this sort of metrics, analytics driven machine for me to help me pay attention. And I used to cry at every comment that I got, like, oh, I got the grams per liter of residual sugar wrong and they hate me, you know, and stuff like that. And he'd be like, no, this is a process. You're going to learn how to communicate. And we started making, I put out this poster called How to Choose Wine. It's this really fun flowchart infographic. And you like start in the middle. And if you want to buy wine for somebody else, you end up like going to the beach with a bottle of vodka. And if you want to buy wine for yourself, it turns into this elaborate, you know, adventure into all these different grape varieties and all this kind of stuff, because it's a little bit self-supporting in that sense. So I buy wine for myself. And the biggest piece of feedback we got was people were like, I actually want to know how to choose wine. That was really great and it was fun and happy-go-lucky, but I would like to know how to choose wine. Can you make another? And so I started making these infographics to help people find wines, like find their spectrum of wines, see the spectrum of wine that was out there. Because I'd had some training with the Court of Masters, so I had like enough to be knowledge to be dangerous. And so I would try to make these infographics to help people find their bottle. And so one of our famous one is this posters called Different Types of Wine. And that one got to the Wall Street Journal. Dave McIntyre wrote about it in the Wall Street Journal. And I got 2 publishers sending me emails being like, we want to make a book. Da, da, da. And one of them was a really fancy art publisher. And I was like, as an artist, I was like, oh my God, it's my dream to be on this art publication. That would be the coolest thing since sliced bread. And my grandmother would be super proud because she's a very artistic lady. And I super look up to her. And my husband was like, Madeline, no. Do you want to write wine for artists? Or do you want to write wine for the people? And I'm like, well, I like the people. I want to help the proletariat. You know, we should all drink more wine. That's always been my idea is that wine is for everyone, right? We all think This is wine people. Wine is for everyone. And so he's like, go with the publisher that is, well, first we're going to get an agent because you're going to get screwed over no matter what. So he went and found me an agent. He's an amazing person. And then we went with this major publisher, Avery Books, which is a Penguin Random House imprint. Yeah, represent. Oh, you got the early copy.
No,
yours does not have the. See, he's got an early copy, people. This is a legit buyer of our book. That's the first edition. The second edition has the James Beard Award print on it. You're awesome. Did I sign that one for you yet?
Yes.
Fuck yeah. All right. Woohoo, GSM. All right, we're good. Woohoo. All right, so early edition. There's some errors and omissions I'll have to let you know about in that one. So yeah, so I ended up going with the major publisher because we could get it out there. And the goal was to get as many books out there as possible. And it's now published in 26 languages and it's all over the place. And then this is book number 2, got a James Beard Award, which was like the Hail Mary of the wine food book world, as far as we all know in the United States. And that was a huge honor. And since then, I've been working with a team because I put all the money that I made from the book and merged with another business to try to make a wine learning resource online. And that's what Wine Folly has become.
I think one of the things that sets you apart from a lot of other people who have tried to do something similar is that you've made it into a real business. I mean, yes, you are a writer. Yes, you are a creator of content, but it's more than that. You have about like a dozen people on your team at this point, right? Yeah.
Real human beings. I am the worst boss though, because I'm like, we're buddies, right? We're working together. And I think people need a little bit stronger. I'm good at inspirational speeches, but I'm not really good at like, we need to do this now. I'm working on it. I really love my team though. They turns out if you hire the right people, they just make you super motivated and excited every day to come to work. And that is why I want to work with people, is because we our new social media person, Sierra, who talked with one of your team, Ian, my business partner, David, who's amazing. We have a new head educator who's a master of wine. She's like the Bollinger Award from Master of Wine. She's so smart and she's hilarious. All I want to do is get drunk. She lives in the United Kingdom, so I haven't had a chance to do this fully. But all I want to do is drink champagne with her. Like it would make me so happy. So working with the right people is so inspiring. And then there's that pressure because we need to make enough money to pay everybody. And so we're just like, we can do it. We're going to figure out, how do we serve our people, our team, our customers, our followers, all these people, and then how do we make amazing products for them that they're actually willing to part with their money for? It's like, whoa. So that's been the entire endeavor since we've sort of boosted up hiring and having a bigger team now.
That's a huge step because it's one thing when you're supporting yourself. It's another thing when you are having to drive an enterprise that has other people who are relying on it too. It's an inspiration, but also a source of stress that I feel on a regular basis.
Bingo! It's so funny because I have weekends off now, and for about a year, because it's been about a year and I've stopped working on weekends. I would have this like incredible stress that I should be working, like this like heavy weight, like I at least need to do something today, like I got to move the business forward on some level, you know. So what I started to do is I would write down everything I need to get done over the weekend, and that list would get shorter and shorter, and I try to move it into Friday, you know, if I could do it during the week. And so I started time blocking my time a little bit better. Before, it was all encompassing in my life. And if that is going to happen to you, talk to me about it. I know what it's like to, oh gosh, like, ooh, you don't want that to happen. You actually want like I'm not going to say there's such a thing as work-life balance. I actually think work is part of your life. I'm kind of like a little bit more holistic in that I feel like I don't want to stop working, because I've talked to old people, and this is, they tell me two things: never stop learning, and they're usually like this, and never stop moving. And I'm like, okay, if I want to go the duration, right, we got to keep moving and keep learning. We can't stop doing it. If you keep working, you can't.
No, you have there's a great quote that you had at the bottom of an email that I saw once, which was, the more you know you don't know. Which, like, I think that's a great way of thinking about wine. I mean, it's a great way of thinking about almost everything, but like wine in particular, like you start learning, and I think it can be kind of daunting for people because they're like, I now realize all of the other things there are out there to learn. But it's also the kind of an interest where like that process of learning isn't something to be discouraged by. It's something to be excited that you still have in front of you.
You know, to that, we did the Paso Robles Wine Guide, right? And it's incredible. Like, I'm not going to puff myself. I'm going to puff my team up. They did an amazing job. And what was so incredible was I thought I knew Paso. I was pretty sure I had a pretty strong, because I'd been there a couple of times. I'd tasted a lot of the wines. I'd done this stuff in the past. I'd written articles about Paso Robles before. But when we created that guide, it's almost like it forced a deeper level of knowledge seeking that I'd ever done before. And what was interesting about it, and ever since Paso's been split up into these different zones, is we're actually now actively looking for those different areas, those different sub-AVAs in the wines that we taste from Paso, which I think is very interesting. And I'm going to put York Mountain in there too, because it's right there. It's basically right there. And I thought it was so interesting that because there's more information now on Paso, we can make more experts on Paso. And one of the things that I've noticed about wine education is that there is incredible education on Burgundy and the wines of Burgundy and all the little sub-AVAs and the little Blue Dietz and the Grand Crus and the Premier Crus, and there's, you know, they're all written up and talked about. But we don't have that level of detail on these other incredible regions that are out there that, you know, timeline-wise, they're similar, maybe 20 years, like 50s, Burgundy was really figuring out their stuff. Like, they've been doing it for thousands of years, I know that, but like, they didn't start marketing their current stuff until around the 50s, right? The way that they do it now. And I'm like, we're not that far behind, you know, in the United States. Like, 1970s is when a lot of these regions sort of got their go. And we actually have incredible terroir here and incredible stories. And my goal was always to create diversity in expertise. So when we are creating these regional guides and these resources on different parts of the world, my goal is that somebody's like, I'm an expert on Rioja, or I'm an expert in, pick a region, somewhere, Paso. I'm an expert here and there, instead of producing French wine experts, which I felt like at the time, and I don't know that they do this now, but Court of Masters was a very French-focused learning program. So you focus on French varieties, you focus on French regions, and you get very good knowledge on France, and it kind of leaves out the other regions and their expertise out of it. And that was one of my big quips with essentially the training programs that we took. So now we're actually working on a training program because kind of following this methodology of like, it's more about learning how to think about wine and ask the right questions than it is necessarily, yeah, we can teach you what's there and what historically you should know. But I believe that it's more about being able to ask you, hey, this Grenache, did you whole cluster ferment it? Because I really taste some texture and structure in this wine that I don't typically associate with this grape variety. And if I could make more geeks like that who are coming into your tasting room and asking you those questions, I would love to hang out with them.
That's a really interesting and I think perceptive way of thinking about the way that people learn things. And I feel like it ties in like with what the New York Times started doing in its food section, a recipe section, where they've started doing these like non-recipe recipes where it's essentially, start with some of this. We're not going to give you ingredients. Do this until it tastes kind of like this, and then think about adding these other things. But the idea that it's not the like, first you do this, then you do this. First you taste for this, then you taste for this. That kind of deductive reasoning where the idea is to specifically identify this wine from this region. Like instead, how do I know what questions to ask to get to an understanding of what who's producing the wine is trying to go for? And I think that's like it's a pretty major leap. You talk about it as though it's like, oh, just the next step in a development, but I think it's an important and different way of thinking about wine education.
Well, we're in a weird, if you haven't noticed, doesn't it feel like we're in the weirdest time period ever right now? I don't remember, like I remember the crash in 2008. That's how I got in the wine world. I lost my job and I started working part-time at a wine bar. But that was a different kind of crash. It was more like okay, we fucked up. Pardon my French. We screwed up. We're gonna try again the same model and figure it out. And now it feels more like we're like, all right, we actually need to make some major changes in how we do things in order to move to the next level as a humanity. And not to go at that deeper level, it could just be wine that I'm talking about. But in that sense, I'm really looking towards education as the base, the foundation of where we're going, and creating more thinking doers versus doers, right? Somebody who can think through the process of why they're doing something. You know, having hired some people on our team, that's what we're looking for, is somebody who can be like, this is our goal, figure it out. And then they go and figure it out. Like, that's like the perfect employee, is somebody who's a self-starter who can actually, doesn't need a lot of, they can come back and check, and is this what you were thinking? Is this what we kind of want for this brand? Is this the right way of doing this? And then you'd be like, yeah, that's amazing. Actually, that's amazing. I wouldn't have thought of that. That's very creative. Like, I kind of want a little bit more of that. And I feel like in order to learn that, you have to stop being a parrot. You have to stop repeating back what's been told to you over and over again. You have to understand why it's being said, right? Hello, how are you? What does that actually mean, instead of hello, how are you? I'm thinking of parrots right now because I like birds.
So, are there people outside of the world of wine who you look to as like examples of communicating these sorts of complicated things in new ways?
Wow. I do a lot of marketing research, and I really like Robert Cialdini. He's my current obsession. Robert Cialdini did this book called Influence, the expanded edition, or whatever. He did an earlier one. Now the new one I read is the expanded edition, and it kind of talks about why people are inspired to do something, why they become influenced by marketing. And he calls it compliance because he's a PhD, and it's based on sort of psychology or whatever of the mind. And he kind of talks about how we have the two ways of thinking fast and thinking slow. So that's Daniel Kahneman wrote that book. Great book. You can get about almost over halfway through it, which is great. It's a very difficult read, but it's a very good book. So Kahneman Influence, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. Then we've got Robert Cialdini, who's got this great book on influence. And then I read this book called Women, Fire, and Dangerous Things, which is a massive tome. I think I'm like 300 pages into like an 800-page book on categorization. And I became obsessed with categories because I've always thought you've got this and then you've got this. And as somebody who's a very digital technology-minded person, when you program, things have to go in certain buckets. There can't be fuzzy categories, right? But the way that the actual world
Everything
works
is
very fuzzy. And they're like, when you think of a chair, were you thinking of this sofa right here? Because that's a chair, you know? So it's this fun sort of break your brain. Think outside of the box that you were taught to think of. And I think that just sort of started to make me realize that that should be part of my core foundation of learning. I had been taught, you know, I literally filled out boxes. When I went to school, we were doing the pencil lead thing, and you would fill out boxes, and then you would get ranked based on your box, right? Your ability to fill out boxes. And so I felt like as an artist, I was already trying to unlearn that stuff because I was trying to be expressive, and I was like, screw the authority, you know, I was a little bit of a punk. But now I'm like trying to relearn why we did the boxes, but then also like, how do you get people, how do we build cool new things? Because we're in a phase where we actually need to think outside of the box that we're in. So yeah, that's my really long, crazy way of getting to an answer.
Okay, so a couple more questions. Not a lot, because I can't believe it has already been half an hour, which seems impossible. But
Sorry.
In terms of what you're doing with Wine Folly, so I know the region guides are a pretty new thing. I think they started coming out just last year. Is that right?
Yeah, we have, I think almost 10, we're going to have 10 guides out this year. And we started basically this last year to producing guides. And the goal has always been to get the wineries and the wines in a visual format so that if you learn about Paso, then you can find wineries and wines from Paso Robles. And it seems like a very obvious, simple thing to do. It's been very difficult. You were some of the first early adopters getting all your wines online with the great information. A lot of the wineries that we sign up, they want to, after the vintage is over, they want to delete it. And we're like, no.
One of my pet peeves in the world.
Please. Don't delete it. It's happened. It existed. It's part of your timeline of your experience of that vineyard over the years. And that story is going to be valuable over time, especially if you make collectible wine
in their cellar, even if you're not selling it anymore. The idea that at that point nobody should really care what's in it or how it was made or why it was done, like that seems crazy.
So the people who've really onboarded to these guides have been the ones who care. So I feel like it's actually been a very great way to find great quality producers in these guides, is because they're the ones who are willing to put their wines in and to save their vintages and to fill out their whole details and stuff like that. And we have more work to be done there, but definitely the guides, it was always my goal. Whenever I wrote about something, people would ask me, well, what do you recommend? And my job is not a critic. I'm not going to tell you what to drink. Like, I could certainly have a few examples, and I do this where I'm like, this is a good example from this area, or look for something like this, you know. I try to keep it open-minded and open-ended because I don't want to show a lot of bias because it's education. But anyway, this is sort of like, the goal is like, if you can learn about a region, you become inspired and you want to find the wines. Wouldn't it be great if that was all sort of capable? Like, you could actually find the producers and stuff like that. That was always my goal, because I kept getting asked this one question. I have been asked this exact question multiple times. It's, I'm going to Burgundy. Do you know any smaller producers that I can go to that don't get imported to the US? No joke, that's the exact question that I get asked. They want to know smaller producers don't get imported to the US. I'm staying in blah blah blah, wherever it is. And so you're like, no, I am not going to tell you the answer to the question. Go do your research. So I kind of want to build something that allows somebody to geek out and be like, honey, I'm imagining myself being like this. Honey, we have to go to this winery. They have a cute dog. It's a female winemaker. History is 5 generations. They grow Pinot Meunier. I can't believe it. We have to go check it out. So I want people to have that geek out factor when they go into a region and discover stuff, and they can make their own story.
Awesome. Okay, last question. So are there things that you have on your, like, I want Wine Folly to do this or be this list that you haven't been able to do yet, but that you're working towards, that you can actually share? Because I know sometimes there's things like that that are like still under wraps, but like, is there, like, what's next? What are you hoping to do next?
We have a few things on the books. We are hoping to continue a wine club in much more of an educational way. So that's coming. Then we also have these wine courses. We already made one, a French wine course, an Italian wine course, but we're looking at making a sort of foundational course, and that's happening right now, and it's going to launch soon-ish, Q4-ish, if we can pull it off the way that I would like to pull it off. So that's actually coming down right now. It's very exciting. And then it's building out the resource. And my goal with that is, right now, the UI doesn't feel like it's easy to get to the answer. And I want to make it easier to navigate through the site, more like an app would, essentially. So we're continuing on that path. And I think those are the things that are really going to sort of help the business be a business, right? You've got courses available, you've got a club, people can get wines and follow along through the club, but they could also take the course, which doesn't involve purchasing wine or anything like that, so we can have wide reach that way. And so those are the things that I'm really excited about with this new educational model. It's very education focused right now. So everything we're doing is essentially that, learning how to better communicate. Like this is like it's like the template. This was good. This is a good job. The thing that's problematic about this is it's already out of date. You know, it's wine changes. There are how many new appellations in the Central Coast right now, like, that are not printed in this book because they didn't exist at the time. And so if I could have a more technology focused version of that, you know, that's available for people to access at any moment, that's essentially the goal, is that digital resource, and then have products that are high quality enough that can support sustaining this resource. Because if you offer it for free, you're not going to make any money, right? And again, I want to have a team. It turns out it's better to have a team than to be a solo pirate, you know, on a little boat out in the ocean.
Awesome. Madeline, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking a chunk out of your Wednesday afternoon to...
Thank you. And thank you for the update. I was actually like riveted and on the edge of my seat because it's a BFD right now. Oh, and it's hot. It was 100 degrees. I have wine here. There's wine back there that I don't know how to have proper refrigeration, and I'm pretty sure it got baked. I am very nervous to check it out. I have one of your bottles still in the fridge, so I'm like, okay, that one's fine. But there's thousands of dollars of wine in there that I am very nervous about. I'm gonna have to check later. They might be okay. It was only a day in San Francisco where it got hot enough, but yeah. Like, Mama Bear is very scared for her wine.
I totally get it. I do think that by and large, like, you can tell if wine is compromised. That's one of the things that I think people sometimes worry. Oh, my wine got warm. It's like, well, did it push past the cork? No. Is the cork pushed out? No. Well, you're almost certainly okay. Like, it's a physics and chemistry question at that point. And yeah,
you'll know when you taste it too. Like, it, you know, if there's matterization and there shouldn't be, like, I'm gonna know. Hopefully it's gonna be fine. And I think they're probably fine because they were in the dark and they're stable more or less in that position. It was for a short period of time, but yeah, it's one of those things where it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. So,
because now I'm gonna find a good wine chilling solution because that just became a serious issue that needs to be resolved.
awesome. Cool. Okay. Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, everybody from the Wine Folly and Tablas Creek fans who joined us. For those of you who missed the introduction, I have been talking with Madeline Puckette, founder of Wine Folly and the creator of some of the really coolest educational content in the world of wine. So, thank you, Madeline. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot,
Bye,
man.
everyone. Woohoo!